They told me my planet never existed. Not that it was destroyed, not that it fell, not that it was lost to the enemy, that it was never there at all. I learned this from a clerk with augmetic eyes who didn't look up when he said it, just scrolled through data slate after data slate, searching for a world I was born on. It wasn't there. My name is Altric Vaughan. I am registered as a void-born refugee of no fixed origin. That is administratum code for inconvenient. I was born on Tarsis Minor. I was 9 years old when we left, old enough to remember. The smell of promethium generators, ash falling like snow. Our governor's palace burning against a sky the color of old copper. Too young to understand what any of it meant, my mother filled in the gaps. She told me about dust storms that rolled in from the southern flats and turned noon into night. About how the sun always looked sick, like it was dying slowly. About the day Imperial ships appeared in the sky and everything changed. Some memories are hers, some are mine. I can no longer tell the difference. The evacuation began without warning. Imperial transports, grey hulls, no regimental markings, no ministorum banners. That should have warned us. They didn't announce themselves, didn't give speeches, didn't promise salvation. They just started loading people. But not everyone. Families were separated at the loading ramps, the sick, the elderly. Anyone who couldn't work was marked with white chalk and directed to a different queue, a queue that never moved. I watched a woman screaming for her son as troopers dragged him toward a transport. She tried to follow, but they'd marked her. Bad leg, chalk line across her chest. She never made it onto a ship. I don't know what happened to the boy. The rest of us were herded into cargo holds. Thousands packed into dark bays that smelled like rust and fear and human waste. No one told us where we were going. We didn't ask. Because asking questions in the Imperium is how you disappear faster. The warp translation came without warning. I've heard people describe warp travel as dreams, visions, communion with the Emperor's light. For me, it was screaming. I remember a man clawing at his own face until there was nothing left to claw. A woman speaking in a language that didn't exist. Children laughing at things no one else could see. When it ended, a third of the hold was dead or dying. Bodies were dragged to the airlocks. No prayers, no rites, just efficient disposal. That wasn't my first lesson in how the Imperium values human life. We were deposited on an agri-world in a sector I'd never heard of, fed, inoculated, assigned work ident numbers. I remember standing in a processing line, waiting for documentation. When I reached the clerk's station, I told him I needed transit papers back to Tarsis Minor. I needed to find my father. He hadn't made it onto our transport. The clerk typed, waited, frowned. There is no such world. I didn't understand. I told him about the copper sky, the dust storms, the burning palace. He flagged me for psychological screening. My mother died on that agri-world, worked to death in the grain fields within 3 years. Her last words to me were, "Find out what happened. Find out why." It took me 16 more years. I learned young that refugees with no documented origin have limited options. I couldn't own land, couldn't hold citizenship, couldn't petition for anything. But I could work a void ship. Chartist vessels always need crew. They don't ask questions, don't check records, just need bodies to fill the ratings. So I became a void sailor, hauling cargo across the segmentum, learning to read star charts, learning which officers could be bribed and which shipping logs could be copied. And eventually, learning where to find people who trade in information the Imperium doesn't want found. Reclamators, they call themselves. Scavengers who deal in deleted records, burned archives, erased data caches. It cost me 6 years of wages and a favor I'd rather not describe, but I found the truth. Tarsis Minor did exist, past tense. Here is what I was able to piece together. 40 years before I was born, a minor administratum error reclassified our world. A single digit changed in a ledger somewhere in the Segmentum archives. Our tithe grade was altered from Salutio Tertius to Salutio Extremis. The difference sounds small. It wasn't. Salutio Tertius meant standard contribution, sustainable output, a world meeting its obligations. Salutio Extremis meant maximum extraction, strategic priority, emergency requisition levels. For 40 years, Tarsis Minor hemorrhaged itself trying to meet quotas that were never meant for us. The first 5 years, they increased shifts. The next 5, they cut rations. Then they started conscripting children for the labor camps. Then they stopped maintaining the infrastructure. Crops failed, mines collapsed, aquifers ran dry. 72 billion people slowly starving, because of a single digit in a ledger no one ever reviewed. My mother said her grandmother remembered when there was still enough. By the time I was born, there was nothing left to give. And when a world can't meet its tithe, it becomes a liability. Someone, I'll never know who, made a calculation. Tarsis Minor's output no longer justified its administrative overhead, so they reclassified us again. This time as purged, lost. Do you understand what that means? It means the Imperium stopped acknowledging us. Supply ships were rerouted. Astropathic contact ceased. We were removed from warp route charts. Officially, we had already fallen. To what, the records didn't say. Orcs, perhaps, or warp storms, or simply the slow death of a world that couldn't sustain itself. The truth didn't matter. The paperwork was complete. The evacuation I remember. The grey ships, the silent soldiers, that wasn't rescue. It was asset reclamation. A Munitorum expedition sent to extract remaining value before the file was closed. Not people, resources, labor units, servitor candidates, anything that could be repurposed. That's why they sorted us at the ramps. That's why they marked the ones who couldn't work. We weren't survivors. We were salvage. 3 months after the Munitorum transports left, a Navy battle group arrived in the Tarsis system. They were responding to a Perdita-class reclamation order, standard protocol for worlds marked as lost, orbital sanitization. Ensure no enemy holds the territory. They found a dying planet, 8 billion people still on it, and they followed their orders. Lance strikes, magma bombs, 16 hours. That's how long it took to murder 8 billion souls. The worst part? No one intended it. There was no inquisitor giving commands, no heresy to purge, no enemy to destroy. Just paperwork. Just a mistake. A clerical error 40 years old. Compounding interest rates on human lives. Bureaucratic debt no one noticed until the ledger demanded payment. And 8 billion people who died to balance the books. And when it was done, someone in the administratum looked at the discrepancy, a destroyed world that was already listed as lost, and made one final calculation. Easier to delete than to explain. They altered the archives, scrubbed the star charts, rewrote the subsector records. Tarsis Minor became a rounding error. A world of 72 billion people erased to avoid an audit. You know what's worse than losing your home? Being told it was never real. A childhood that contradicts Imperial record. Parents who officially never lived. I went back once. It took me 3 years to plan. Bribed a navigator's assistant for the coordinates, stole a shuttle during a resupply stop in the Vaxian Reach. Told myself I just needed to see it. There's nothing there now. Debris, molten rock, radiation storms, an asteroid field made from my world's bones. I sat in that stolen shuttle for 6 hours, looked out at where my home should have been. And there was nothing to mourn. No grave, no marker, not even a name. I've tried to tell people, other refugees, guardsmen, even a Ministorum priest once. They all say the same thing. Be grateful you were saved. Saved. Saved from what? From existing? From being inconvenient? From being a rounding error in someone's production report? They don't want to hear it, because if my planet was deleted, how many others were too? How many people are walking around with origins that don't exist? How many ghosts are pretending to be citizens? I still say Tarsis Minor when they ask where I'm from. It gets me strange looks. I don't care. They can delete records, burn archives, rewrite charts, but they can't reach inside my skull. They can't erase my mother's voice telling me about copper skies. They can't delete the way ash used to fall like snow. You can't tithe a ghost. My name is Altric Vaughan. I am from Tarsis Minor, and you will never find it on any chart. But I remember, and that is enough.